Chapter 4: The Fall of TETRAGRMMMATON, the Principles of Creation. When discussing the philosophy of the Kabbalah, we touched upon the principles of creation. Here we will return to this subject, for they constitute the foundations of mystic knowledge towards which, as we shall show later on, scientific thought is tending. First, it must be realized that though, in the ordinary use of words, creation conveys to us an idea of springing up, that is of newness and novelty, to the Kabbalist it conveys the opposite idea, namely, that of descending, obscuring, and grossifying. For instance, no rational being would assert that a work of art was greater than the artist who created it. A statue is an artistic idea materialized. It is of stone, clay, or metal, pure matter, to which has been added an ideal form which emanated from the thoughts of a human being also fashioned of matter, that is of flesh, blood, and bone. It was not thought which created the material of the statue, for this existed before the thought arose in the head of the artist, yet thought did give to the statue its form, and this crystallized thought may live on long after the flesh, blood, and bone of the artist have fallen to dust. Will the artist, then, have perished? No, not altogether, for he will in part live on in the form of the statue which perhaps for thousands of years will proclaim his genius to those who look upon it. With the entire world, the entire universe, it is the same, but with this difference, it expresses the totality of the thoughts of the divine thinker. Thought, we have seen, gave it form, therefore the universe is God in form and in activity. All that has been created, says the Zohar, from the holy beasts the cherubim in the highest firmament, down to the tiniest worm that crawls upon the earth, lives in Elohim and through Elohim. One, that is to say, everything which is, has been, or will be is formed by the divine thought, therefore the universe is the symbol of the divine thinker. What is it formed of? What is the material? The void and the formless, the negative and the positive of VHB, Bohu, BHV, and Vihu, Tohu, THHV, which find their harmony in the darkness. And be it noted that Beth, the first letter of BHV, is the letter of creation, the first letter of Genesis, and that it represents the open mouth, or parted lips, which utter the Logoi word. Also that as Tau, the first letter of THHV, is the final letter of the Hebrew alphabet, it completes the utterance, and as its numerical value is 400 it represents the 400 Sephiroth of the four worlds. Finally, that each word includes a he and a va, a feminine and a masculine quantity, and that the numerical values of these four letters is 22, the number of letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Consequently, potentially, the names of all things, forms, are included in them. These two find their equilibrium in darkness or the black fire. Tohu, we are told, is under the aegis of Shaddai, Bohu, under that of Zebaoth, darkness, under that of Elohim, spirit, under that of YHVH. There was a strong wind breaking the mountains, but the Lord was not in the wind, because this name was not in it, since Shaddai presides over it through the mystic nature of Tohu. After the wind there was a quaking, but the Lord was not in the quaking, since over it presides the name of Zebaoth, through the mystic nature of Bohu, which is called quaking Rash, because it quakes continually. After the quaking there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, because over it presides the name Elohim from the side of darkness. And after the fire there was a small still voice, and here at last was found the name YHVH. Secret Wisdom of the Kabbalah, page 49. This small still voice represents the Shin emerging from YHSHVH, which by turning the darkness into a luminous mirror enabled YHVH to be reflected upon it. Then only was the balance between the former and the formless established. As the divine spark scintillated forth, he caused a wind to blow from above against a wind that blew from below. From the shock of the meeting of these two winds, a drop emerged and rose from the depths of the abyss. This drop united the winds, and from the union of these winds the world was born. 3. A simulacrum of Elohim, who? These. In which the form of every atom represents a divine idea. Or we may try to understand it in another way. The indivisible point or supreme point sends forth a light of such transparency, limpidity, and subtlety that it penetrates everywhere. Around the point, the penetration of its own light forms a ring or a palace. The light of the supreme point being of an inconceivable brilliance, the light of the palace which is inferior to it looks like a dark circle round it. But the light of the first palace, though it may seem dark by comparison with the point itself, is yet of an immense splendor which gives off another ring or palace forming a sort of envelope around the first one. So that, emanating from the supreme point, all the degrees of creation are but envelopes, the one for the other. The envelope of the superior degree forms the brain of the degree next to it. For here is presented to us a system of worlds within worlds. First there is the world, or expanse, of no thingness, then the air, or ether, next the or light, then 10 sephirotic rings of light, one grosser than the other, until the last is composed of air, fire, water, earth, and spirit, or od, he, va, he, and shin, in which the form is visible because of the existence of the spirit. By the cry Yehi or, let there be light, was the world created, and Yehi is a combination of od and he, hi, the great father and the great mother, the eternal complements. Finally, it may be asked, what was the reason for the creation? And the Kabbalist answers, this is not a rightful question, because God is beyond reason. To him omnipotence supposes authority, necessity, and liberty, and through necessity the universe came into being in the form of authority and liberty, law and free will. Necessity is in fact the divine mystery which is beyond all reason. It exists, it is, I am, the secret of Elohim. The experimental worlds. Before the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters and cast the divine shadow on the formless void, we are told again and again in the Zohar that experimental worlds had existed and had been destroyed on account of their imperfection. We read before the aged of the aged, the An Sof, the concealed of the concealed, expanded into the form of king, the crown of crowns, Kether, there was neither being nor end. He hewed and incised forms and figures into it in the following manner, he spread before him a cover, and carved therein kings, worlds, and marked out their limits and forms, but they could not preserve themselves. Therefore it is written, these are the kings that reigned in the land of Edom before there reigned any king over the children of Israel. Genesis 30, 3i. This refers to the primordial kings and primordial Israel. All these were imperfect, he therefore removed them and let them vanish, till he finally descended himself to this cover and assumed a form. 5. But though they vanished they were not annihilated, because nothing perisheth in this world, not even the breath which issued from the mouth, for this, like everything else, has its place and destination, and the Holy One, blessed be his name, turns it into service. 6. These worlds were formless, because the sacred aged had not as yet assumed his form, the king and queen as opposite sexes, and the master was not yet at his work. 7. By the word master is meant Adam Qadmon, the human form which deity must of necessity assume. It was, therefore, after the destruction of the worlds of the kings of Edom that the latens Didas was able to assume a balanced form in the fourth and material world. Thus the Zohar says, the Holy One, blessed be he, created and destroyed several worlds before the present one was made, and when the last work was nigh completion, all the things of this world, all the creatures of the universe, in whatever age they were to exist, before ever they entered into this world, were present before God in their true form. Thus are the words of Ecclesiastes to be understood, what was, shall be, and what has been done, shall be done. 8. This strange story is both obscure and perplexing, because it is difficult to attribute imperfection to God. But to the Kabbalist it is otherwise, for the no-thing evolves into the something, the who, and necessity creeps in, for necessity is impossible without a choice, and choice demands the existence of opposing forces, the male and the female, or the positive and the negative. We are told somewhat mysteriously, before the forms of the Holy King, the Atik, were prepared, it built worlds and made forms for their preservation, but the female principle was not joined yet with the male principle. Therefore they could not exist until this was done. 9. Until this balance was established Adam Qadmon could not appear and replace the Adam Belial of the unbalanced world and the averse tree of life from which the races of the Gentiles are sprung. It would, therefore, appear that the reason for the creation of the kings of Edom was to account for the world being peopled with races other than that of Israel. Adam Qadmon. On several occasions already have we made mention of Adam Qadmon. He is called by various names, such as the primordial man, the archetypal man, Microprosopis, the man of the east, the shadow of the invisible Macrocosm, the pre-existing soul of Messiah, the cosmic sun, etc., etc. Strictly speaking, he is the form, not the spirit, of deity in Atziluth. Nevertheless, he is also the emanations of this form in the remaining three worlds, consequently there are 4 Adam Qadmons. As regards the first of these, Isaac Meyer writes the Kabbalah shows the existence of 4 atoms, or rather 3 continuations of the upper heavenly atom. I, the perfect upper heavenly atom of the 8 Selatic world, the world of emanation. It is androgenic and the sole occupant of that world. It is thought of as a manifestation of the deity in the divine Diyukna shadow, or an undefined phantom shade of the Tzilim image, which the earthly man, in the flesh, has never seen. It is a perfect tsur, or prototype, to the second and subsequent atoms. In the upper heavenly man is the perfect holy nefesh instincts, ruah reason, neshama moral consciousness, heya animal vitality and yehida personality, merged in combination yet existing quasi-separately. Here is also the content of the upper 10 Sephiroth. It answers to the intellectual, the brain, and is in the upper inner emanated heaven. It also answers to the holy upper neshama soul. 10 as regards the next 3, Meyer is more than unreliable, for he is misleading, consequently we will rely on our own interpretation. Each is a shadow or lower appearance of the one above, the second being attributed to the Bryatic world, Metatron, and the Ruach, the third to the Yetziratic world, Samel, and the Nefesh, the fourth to the Asiatic world, YHVH, and the Haya, or Haya, the supernal man of Genesis I, 26. Together they represent the grand personality or great universal man, the synthesis of Adam Qadmon in the 4 worlds. In the world of Asaya, Adam Qadmon is the symbolical reflection of God, not on the illuminated void, but on the mist of matter, and by this reflection is the earthly Adam created. He is androgynous. Like his greater prototype in Atziluth, being both male and female, and therefore he possesses the power to create and to destroy life, that is to exhale it and breathe it in. Thus we see evolved that mysterious and mystical order of revolution. First there is God, or the gods, energy finding its source in the ion. Finally, in the reflection of God is the world emanated, and from the earth emerges man in the form of conscious matter. God in himself is unity, the world is duality, and man is trinity in unity. And as the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, so does the intelligence of man move upon the face of the fluxes of matter, and through equilibrium it seeks loss of its identity by stilling them in the Spirit of God. When this is accomplished, then will the magic mirror of illusion vanish into the nothingness out of which it was evolved. In the account of the creation in Genesis, the androgenic man appears on the sixth day, that is at the end of the creation, because he symbolizes its totality and completion, and 6 is the number of the great work, 666 being also its number in the vital, intellectual, and spiritual planes, the Va extended from Makath to Kether. In the second account of the creation, the androgenic man is formed of the dust of the ground, and the Lord God, that is Tetragrammaton Elohim, and not merely Elohim as in the first account, breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, that is the Nefesh, and man became a living soul. 11 Next, the Neshama, Eden, the garden of the intellect, is planted and man is put into it, but is oblivious of the knowledge of good and evil, because as yet he possesses no Ruach, that is power of judgment, and it is only after the temptation of Eve that the Ruach is established and the androgenic man becomes fully active. Until this transformation takes place, it would appear that the androgenic man is only occultly the shadow of Tetragrammaton. He is not YHVH, HVHY, but YVY, YVY, for the Zohar informs us that God brought them man-shaped for this world and man-shaped for the future world under the aegis of his own name by shaping the two eyes like the letter OD and the nose between them like the letter Va. 12 At once we see the connection, for YVY equals 26, the numerical value of Tetragrammaton, further, as we will show later on, by splitting one of the two Odin into He and He, 10 into 5, and inserting the Va between them we obtain HVH, Eve. Again, as already explained, the two Odin and the Va are the members of the letter Aleph, the first letter of the mystical creative alphabet. We are also told in the Zohar that when the first man was created, God gathered the dust from all the four sides of the world and spread upon her a soul of life from the holiness above. 13 That this soul was the Neshama, which, like the mystery above, comprised 3 degrees, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. The third corresponds to the Braitic world, the second to the Yetziratic, and the first to the Asiatic, the body of man being the mystical and magical Merkaba. It is also to be noted that the Neshama has 3 divisions, the highest is the Ye, Hida, the middle the Heya, the last, and third the Neshama, properly to say. They manifest themselves in the Mashaba thought, Tselem phantom of the image, Zurath prototypes, and the D Yukna shadow of the phantom image. The Demuth likeness or similitude is a lower manifestation. 14 Such was the organization of the great vitality, the Adam Qadmon of Isaiah, who for 130 years had done intercourse with female spirits. 15 Begetting the evil powers of the world, powers which are endowed with life but not with immortality until they have been set in conflict with the good and have become equilibrated. To effect this transmutation demanded an angelic race of men and, consequently, the creation of the angelic mother. The creation of Eve. In the second chapter of Genesis we are told that Tetragrammaton Elohim took a rib from the body of Adam and from it fashioned woman, the passive or feminine essence of the archetypal man. The Kabbalistic interpretation is as follows: the rib is the letter Od, which when removed from the 4 letters Od Hevah leaves Hevah, or Eve. The actual transmutation from Od Va Od to Od Hevah we have already described. The Od, as it will be remembered, also symbolizes the 10 Sephiroth of the Yetziratic world, which are reflected in the Asiatic world in the form of the Garden of Eden, which mystically is the garment of God. The Od being extracted, the mystical eye is closed, that is, the vision of the Yetziratic tree of life is cut off from the world of Isaiah. Consequently, though Adam and Eve perceived that they were naked, they were not ashamed, that is they could not perceive the nakedness of the Asiatic world, because the Yetziratic vision having vanished there was no comparison, duality, left to judge it by. They were in fact bereft of all power of directly perceiving the Shekinah, or supernal light. There is yet another mystery included in the letter Od. Its hieroglyphic is the human hand. When opened it symbolizes the microcosm, the 4 fingers the material elements, Od, He, Va, He, and the thumb the spiritual element, Shin. When closed it symbolizes unity, the egg out of which all things emanate. As its numerical value is 10 it also symbolizes the 2 hands, the erect or good pentagram and the inverted or evil pentagram, see diagram 4 on page 53. 10 is a combination of unity and 0, therefore mystically there is a relationship between Od and Aleph, and Od and what is beyond Aleph, the beginning. The numerical value of Aleph is 1, the 2 arms of which convey the meaning of, as above so beneath. In this letter is symbolized the whole of creation. The top arm is deity, the crossbar the waters, motionless as 0, and the lower arm the reflection of the higher arm on the waters. Thus we obtain from A, or 1 divided by 0 divided by 1, or 10 divided by 0 divided by 10, the first equals 2, the second 20, and Od spelt in full, Od Vadaleth, equals 20, therefore the 2 together equal 22, that is the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet which constitute the paths of the tree of life and out of which, with the Sephiroth, the universe is mystically formed. Finally, as Od represents the 10 Sephiroth and the 22 paths, it is the symbol of all things concentrated in the primordial point. In the third chapter of Genesis the fall of man is described. To the Kabbalist it depicts the first step in the redemption of Tetragrammaton, for unless Eve had tempted Adam, good and evil could never have been harmonized. The apple is the Sephirah of Esod, the foundation and the source of generative and regenerative power. We have described how evil, really activity, emanated out of God in the form of Tetragrammaton. This being so, according to Kabbalistic philosophy, out of evil must good, or God, evolve, for, as above so beneath, and, as beneath so above, are the laws of Kabbalistic inversion. Just as the serpent of Cronus devoured its tail, so must evil, in the form of the satanic serpent, devour itself. This magical operation of activity eating up activity is the central principle in the Messianic Act, which we will examine more fully in the next chapter. Here we will restrict ourselves to a few introductory remarks. Secret Wisdom of the Kabbalah, page 53, diagram 4, the good and evil pentagrams. The Messianic Redemption. To begin with, there is no serpent, then one serpent, lastly two forms of one serpent, that is a serpent possessing two complementary energies which when balanced cause its immediate destruction. These two energies, or powers, are called Metatron and Samel, and in the name of Tetragrammaton they are symbolized by the Od and the Va, the serpent coiled up or passive and the serpent erect or active. The first represents the creative energy and the second actual movement or change. These two serpents are the guardians of those forces which man calls good and evil. They are, as we have already mentioned, symbolized by Yakin and Boaz, the pillars of Solomon's temple, and flow in together through the 50 gates of Bina, 50 being the numerical value of LK, which means all, or the understanding of all. Moses failed to open the 50th of these gates. Had he done so, he would have become the Messiah of Israel. When the Messiah does come, the Sabbatic millenary will be accomplished, all Israel will be blessed, 16 and will become one nation in the Lord, 17, that is to say, this world will be inhabited solely by the chosen people. There is the energy of the serpent of Genesis, Nchsh, Nakash, and the energy of the brazen serpent which healed the afflicted Israelites, Mishach, Messiah. Both have the same numerical values, namely 358, consequently when one is subtracted from the other the result is 0, that is deliverance from both good and evil. In order to understand this we will repeat it again. Good is a means of balancing out evil, and evil a means of balancing out good. Neither is desirable in itself except in the material world, which cannot exist without them. Equally, the spiritual world cannot be entered as long as they exist. Consequently, their adverseness is purely relative to the spiritual world. Further on in this book we will show that the power of using either is drawn from the same source, Shin, Shekinah, astral light, ether, electricity, whatever name it may be called by, and to understand the use of this force, yet never to be obsessed by it, is to trample on the head of the serpent and so re-establish the Shin in the body of Tetragrammaton and formulate the Messiah, the incarnate word which when disincarnated caused the Asiatic world to be. In brief, this is the central doctrine of the Kabbalistic redemption, yet so dangerous did this doctrine appear, should it be divulged to the uninitiated, that to safeguard it was locked away in a jumble of symbols, names, figures, and cryptograms which are frequently contradictory. The danger was that this philosophy not only harmonized good and evil, but maintained that all goodness proceeds from evil. Mystically this means a return of man to God, but by the ignorant it might easily be interpreted as meaning the doing of evil for the sake of spiritual gain. We will repeat it again. To the Hebrew mystic the God of Genesis, Tetragrammaton Elohim, is not the ultimate God, or Ayin, the incomprehensible nothing, but its lowest emanation, matter, or grossness, personified, a reflection of a reflection 4 times removed. Yet this emanation is the only one which can be comprehended by man, who in this microcosmic life can only struggle forward through the clash between passivity and activity, which are both good and evil according to circumstances, that is according to necessity. Necessity is divinity in hiding, authority is the divinity of the religious order and liberty is divinity in man. The establisher of authority is the Messiah. These mystical philosophers fully recognized the necessity for original sin, because the world is of Satan and man is of the world. Man is born in sin, not the sin of Adam's disobedience, carnal or physical sin, but in the mystical and spiritual sin of Tetragrammaton's fall. The blame was thrown upon Adam, the man, not out of deference to the deity, but to conceal this potent secret from the uninitiated. In order to redeem the sin in which all mankind is born, it was necessary that a passive-active emanation be created to balance the active-passive satanic force. This emanation was to be the Messiah of the world, on whose advent equilibrium would be re-established. This supreme cancellation was the one hope of Israel.